Welcome to the Observeday podcast, the show where we celebrate the days that matter. From holidays to meaningful observances, we bring you inspiring conversations, stories, and ideas to make each day count. Whether it's raising awareness, learning something new, or simply sparking joy, this is your space to explore the calendar in a whole new way. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to share today's observance with you. Let's dive in. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, a time to raise awareness, encourage early detection, and share stories of courage and resilience. My guest today is Erica Neubert Campbell, a breast cancer survivor, best-selling author, and longtime advocate who speaks what she calls the vocabulary of cancer. Erica's memoir, The Mastectomy I Always Wanted, brings candor, humor, and raw honesty to a journey many fear but few openly talk about, from losing her mother to breast cancer, walking through her own diagnosis and mastectomy. Erica has turned her experience into a mission, helping other women face fear, embrace vulnerability, and trust the process. Her story is not just about surviving, but about finding light, humor, and even empowerment in the hardest chapters of life. Today, we'll dive into our journey and explore what breast cancer awareness month really means beyond the pink ribbons. Welcome to the podcast, Erica.
Thank you so much, Wisdom. I'm so delighted to be here.
Yeah, October is all about awareness. What role do you think storytelling plays in encouraging women to get checked early?
I think storytelling is the best way to do that. You could recite statistics or you could talk to physicians, but a story is what will capture your heart, and a story is what will motivate you to go and get that early detection. And it's really hard sometimes to take that first step, which is simply to make an appointment to get a mammogram or to get any kind of physical or checkup. And so I think stories are the tipping point to really encourage people. They can see themselves in a story, and it motivates them to change.
Yeah. While I was checking your profile, one of the things I noticed is you say you speak the vocabulary of cancer. What do you mean when you use that expression?
Yeah. Well, I would say that when you have a new cancer diagnosis or a cancer diagnosis of a friend, a loved one, or a family member, there are so many words that come at you that you are completely unfamiliar with. And I know that happened to me, but what I experienced is my mother had breast cancer. And so I was able to, what I call, quote, learn that vocabulary for some really technical terms that, can be really scary for somebody. Neuropathy is a word that, sounds kind of big, but it's about losing feeling in your fingers when you're on chemotherapy treatments. Neutropenic is another word that's kind of unfamiliar to people. That word means when your immune system is compromised because you're on chemotherapy. So when my mother was diagnosed, I had to force myself to learn all of these new words that were scary and unfamiliar. Another thing I had done was I volunteered with a summer camp for children with cancer for 20 years. And that's another series of big words and scary words that I was able to learn, again, through those experiences, through what I saw kids do, and, all of the treatments that different kids at different stages of their treatment were in. So when it was my turn, unfortunately, when I faced my own diagnosis, this is where I said, I already have that vocabulary of cancer. I already knew a lot of words that were very unfamiliar to me if I hadn't been through my mother's diagnosis and if I hadn't been a volunteer with kids with cancer. So I felt like I came into my own diagnosis, not only with a vocabulary, but with just some additional knowledge than probably the generic human on this planet. And so I found myself in a very unique position when I was diagnosed myself with that vocabulary.
Yeah. I wanted you to take us back to your diagnosis moment. What did it look like?
Yeah, I mean, despite what I just told you, despite my familiarity with cancer, right? I had been volunteering with kids with cancer. My mother had a diagnosis. Despite all of that experience and that vocabulary, it was still shocking and devastating. I was at work and it was late on a Friday. I had a biopsy, which again, in that vocabulary, a biopsy is when you have a needle inserted into a scary part, a tumor, and they sort of are doing a lot of analysis on that tumor.
Yeah.
And so I was waiting for the results of that biopsy, and it had been a very long time. So by Friday afternoon, my anxiety was so high because I had been waiting for over a week and constantly checking my phone, constantly wondering if I'd missed a call from the physician. So it was about 4 o'clock on a Friday when the phone rang, and it was the doctor. And they didn't really say hello. They just said, "Are you sitting down and are you alone?" Which is never what you really want to hear when a doctor calls you.
Uh,
And so they said, or the doctor said, "You have breast cancer." And, of course I was listening, but the minute you hear you have cancer, your mind just completely goes into all sorts of deep, dark places and worst case scenarios. And I'd be honest, I wasn't really listening. I was writing down all the words and the new vocabulary that the physician was telling me about the kind of cancer I had and things like that. But it's really jarring, and your world just completely turns upside down. So, obviously I took that phone call quiet and alone in an office, and I had to hang up the phone and decide what to do next. And that's a very lonely moment. I think that was the most alone I ever felt. And, obviously from there was probably the darkest part. But that was the start of my diagnosis and the start of a very long journey.
how did hearing that news that, oh, you have breast cancer, what are the things that immediately started to change in your life? Like like after the news, just the certain things just changed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say uh, everything changes, right? You think about your family different, right? And a lot of the the problems that you think you had, they suddenly disappear
Yeah.
because your prioritization gets completely reshuffled. I thought about work differently, right? Work doesn't matter as much when you're dealing with a health crisis. Even
Uh,
your own appearance, right? Everything sort of takes a back seat, and it's everything from big macro things you think about what is the meaning of life and where do I fit into it, to down to what health insurance do I have, or how am I going to, put food on the table, right? There's just lots of different things. How am I going to afford it?
Before we dive deeper, I'd love to invite you to join the Observeday newsletter. Every week, I send you highlights of upcoming observances, creative ways to celebrate, and behind the scenes extras from the shows. It's the perfect way to stay inspired and never miss a meaningful moment. Sign up today at observeday.com/join. That is observeday.com/join. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
There's a lot of aspects of your life that suddenly get a spotlight. And for me, it was a lot around childcare because I had two young kids, ages, they were 3 and 7. And so childcare became an issue. Just doing simple household tasks like laundry, all became suddenly both unimportant, but also hard.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Erica. In your book, the title it's called "The Mastectomy I Always Wanted." You talk about choosing the mastectomy. What helps you make that decision? Why did you choose that over other options?
Yeah, this is a really interesting story. I mentioned that my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, she passed away from that disease.
Sorry
And
to hear that.
yeah, and, towards the end of her life, one really critical moment happened, which was she was in the hospital, and her medical file at that point, after years and years of fighting breast cancer, her medical file was really thick, the kind where it's like almost like a novel.
Yeah.
And a young doctor came in, and it was in the middle of the night. He was probably on the shift that nobody wants, right? He was like, the midnight shift. And he starts thumbing through her health history. And he looks and he says, "Huh, that's interesting. Your mother didn't have a mastectomy from the start of her treatment. I bet if she'd had a mastectomy from the beginning, you wouldn't be here today in the situation that you're in." Which was really kind of jarring for me
Yeah.
because it was a decision we had made at the start of her journey, at the start of her treatment, and it probably did cause two paths to diverge.
Yeah.
And so for many, many years, I wrestled with that moment. I wrestled with what might have been, what if we had chosen another path back at the start of her journey. And so breast cancer was always something I was deathly afraid of. I mean, pun, I guess, intended.
Yeah.
And I was always afraid I was going to get diagnosed myself. And sure enough, 15 years later, after she died, I was right. I did get diagnosed myself. And so I became that person at that crossroads where I had to make a decision between having a mastectomy, which is a removal of your breasts, or what my mother had was just a simple lumpectomy where they just take out the little tumor in your body or in your breast. And so it was an easy choice for me. I knew that I wanted to make a different choice than my mother, somewhat to rewrite her story, obviously to hopefully save my life. And I am here today. But having to make that choice, it's very powerful when you think about what choices you make in your life and what choices you make in your own health decisions and your mindset. Obviously, it's a physical ailment that cancer and breast cancer is, but it's a mindset and it's a mental game that you face. So when I shifted the decision to be a choice that I'm saying this was the mastectomy I was choosing and I wanted, I felt more powerful in my own health choices. And so it was a mindset shift. And that's why I named that book. Here, I have it right here. The Mastectomy I Always Wanted. Because if I thought about it that way, I felt more powerful. I felt more in control in a situation that could obviously feel very out of control. So it was a very, very intentional mindset shift.
Yeah, I'm curious, the mastectomy, was it just the affected parts or both of the breast?
Yeah, I mean, I chose, I only had a tumor in one side, the left side of my breast. But again, this was a choice I made. I was terrified of if they just took out that little one tumor, you still have a whole other breast and you still have
What
what
if?
remains in the original one. And I didn't want any part of it. I didn't want any fear because that's what I talked about earlier. It's a mindset. I didn't want to live with the fear of it coming back. And that's what happened to my mother. It came back in the same spot that they had that one little lump removed. And so I made that choice. I chose to have this double mastectomy. They call it double because it's both, in order to not only protect my health physically, but my health mentally.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Erica. One of the stories you share is you did mention that a stranger once gave you hope by showing you our own reconstruction.
Yeah.
Before we even go with the story, I'd love to know for those that are hearing the word reconstruction for the first time, what's that all about? And then you tell us the story of the stranger showing you our own reconstruction.
For sure. So yeah, I mean, this is that vocabulary of cancer I was talking about, right?
Yeah.
So a mastectomy, you could have a single or a double, meaning one breast or two. And so that's one option when you make these choices. And then the second choice you get to make is what to do after they remove those breasts. You could stay flat, right? They could just take off your breast the way that if you removed an arm, you don't put a fake arm back on. You could choose to stay flat and just have those breasts removed. Or you could have reconstructive surgery. And reconstruction is when they put implants in your body, literally like fake breasts, to really look real, as if your body had never had the mastectomy. And it's called reconstructive surgery. There's lots of different kinds, lots of different options. But I would say the most simplest term to describe it is essentially having fake breasts put in. Yeah. And so those are big choices, and you get to choose what they look like and all those different things. So, I told you I was working at the time and I had chosen to have a double mastectomy. So I had to let my team know that I was going to be out for several weeks because it's a very long recovery. And I was crying in the meeting saying, I've got breast cancer. I'm having a double mastectomy. I've chosen reconstructive surgery and I'll be out for a long period of time. After the meeting, this woman at work who I did not know, she was new to the team. She was kind of a stranger. She leans in and she whispers and she says, I had a double mastectomy and reconstructive about 5 years ago. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And she said, do you want to see my breasts? And I'm like, I do not know you. You work with me. This is not professional. But
Yeah,
oh my
HR.
God, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Right. And
uh,
it was not what I was expecting to happen. So we found a bathroom off the beaten path and, locked the door behind us. And she took off her shirt and she shows me these reconstructive breasts. Now, again, I told you they are fake. They're not real. It's, sort of a silicone implant. But I will tell you, when I looked at them, hers looked so real. I could not believe that she had had this surgery. It was, I mean, so shocking and it's in a good way because, when you're faced with all of these decisions about your body as a woman, it's really hard because a lot of women are observed, judged, and evaluated based on what you look like. And to have hers look so real gave me so much hope. I knew that it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be painful. I knew it was going to be challenging. But I also knew because of this woman that it was going to be okay. Someday it was going to be okay. And that was such a gift, right? I mean, to have a stranger, a near stranger, show you something so vulnerable and intimate in a way that's just loving and supportive was such a gift. And I thought about that for so long during my surgery and recovery time. So that's why I wrote the book, because it is I'm trying to pay it forward. The book that I wrote has pictures. So other women who are going to be diagnosed in the years to come can also see what that looks like. They can have that experience of what it was like for me and this woman in the bathroom, but just in the privacy of their own home through a book. And so that is, it's a nod to what I experienced and the gift I was given of vulnerability by a stranger. That kindness, I'm trying to pay it forward with my book.
yeah. Thank you for writing the book, Erica.
Well,
You know,
thank you.
so far you've been sharing, so from the stories you've shared so far, it's clear from what you've written in your book that you write about fear, choice, and trust as central themes. Now you share stories about how, you being scared of, okay, this might happen, and then eventually it happened, right? You talked about choice. You chose the double mastectomy. Now the trust part of the central theme. I'm curious. Whoa, how did that play out?
I would actually say trust was, in some ways, the biggest part because when you do get diagnosed, right? I got that one phone call from the doctor. That phone call lasted maybe 4 minutes. And then I went to the doctor and met with this woman in person. And she's talking about a major life change, not only to my health, but to my body. And I probably spent about 15 minutes with her, right? So I'm entrusting my life, my body to someone that I've met for now 15 minutes and talked to for a number of 4. The number of people and I guess, new strangers almost that I had to trust in that process was astronomical. And, I met with another surgeon. So I met with 2 surgeons, one to remove the breasts and then one to put in the fake breasts. And I remember meeting with the one to put in the fake breasts. It's called a plastic surgeon. And, he's telling me about all of these different things that he's going to put in my body to get it to the way it's going to look in the end. Some really, really crazy stuff. And he just kept saying, trust me, it's going to look okay. Trust me. And so I really reflected on that trust piece. And so I literally had to put my hands in the, with people I had just barely met. And so I found that really interesting. Even funny after my surgery, right after, and there's a photo of this in the book. I look terrible. I look like Frankenstein, right? Like I have these, I have a flat chest. I have stitches that are just, jagged and mismatched and ugly. And I just looked down and I kept just crying. And I happened to go for a checkup and the nurse walks in and, she takes a look at them and she goes, oh, and I go, oh my gosh, what? She goes, oh, it looks so good. And I was like, what are
Really?
you talking about? I'm like, are we looking at the same thing? She goes, no, I know it doesn't look right now. She said, but trust me, I can see the way that the surgeon has done these stitches. He's done a beautiful job. And I can tell that over time, once this heals, it's going to look really, really good. It's one of the best jobs I've seen. And I remember thinking, she just took me by the shoulders and she said, no, you have to trust me. It's going to be okay. And so again, that trust piece kept coming up over and over again. And she was right.
Yeah.
She was right.
Everything turned out okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had to
Well,
trust myself in that I had to trust that I believed these people. I had to trust my own instincts about, who to trust. So, I mean, it's kind of it's a cycle, trusting yourself and trusting others, trusting yourself and trusting others.
yeah. Well, how long ago did this happen?
This is now 7 years ago,
Wow.
7 years ago. And, I would say I would never wish this on my worst enemy, right? It's like, it was really hard and really scary and really challenging. And it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me, which is that I find that with like years that have passed, the number of people that I've met, the growth I've experienced in myself, and my own health that has improved both physically and mentally, that has been worth it. And, it's really interesting to think back to where I was and the stories I've told you of extreme fear and anxiety and, trepidation to where I am today. And it's just, it's quite the journey.
Yeah. Well, we at the beginning of the episode we started with vocabulary of cancer and all that. How do you see breast cancer awareness evolving beyond just pink ribbons, logos, to deeper work and stories that goes beyond just fancy words thrown around and all that?
Yeah. I laugh. I feel like I have a very complicated relationship with the pink ribbon. And what I mean by that is I certainly appreciate the attention that it gets during October, or year round, anytime, because it does hopefully raise awareness. And the biggest thing that I always want, Wisdom, is for women to have regular exams and checkups and mammograms. Like that is, so if the pink ribbon achieves that goal and that vision, great. But I really struggle with some of the monetization of the pink ribbon, where I think there are maybe some companies or institutions that benefit from that, but don't necessarily give back to research
Just
in a way that's
just
meaningful.
just for context sake, when we talking about pink ribbon, what are we even talking about? Because I know some person like, oh, wait, what's pink ribbon?
Yeah. Yeah, a pink ribbon is a symbol of breast cancer. And it often goes now on merchandise, right? So, like, I remember I was at a store once and there was like a cellophane tape dispenser that had pink ribbons all over it. And they were selling it saying it was going to help breast cancer patients. And I was like, how
Really?
is that possible? How, like me buying this tape is not necessarily going to save my mother or save me, right? Maybe it donated $500 to research, right, over that company's lifetime. So, I struggled with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Thank you for clarifying
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But I do think that, on balance, the pink, they call it the pink wave, the pink ribbon, whatever you want to call it, can be beneficial. When it goes a little too far is when I start to struggle.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you for that. What message would you give to women, caregivers, and who are standing at the edge of a mastectomy decision right now?
Great question. I would say, and I mean this so desperately, you are not alone. That is what I want women to hear. You are not alone. It may feel lonely and it may feel so scary, but there is an entire community of women and caregivers that have been through it and that want to support you, including me. I will respond to every single person who reaches out to me on my website. But you would be surprised if you're newly diagnosed. You may feel like you're the only person you know in your community or your neighborhood or your family that would understand, but there are other people out there. You just have to take the time to find them. You are not
Yeah,
alone.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for that advice, Erica. Um, if you had to describe your breast cancer journey, just in 3 words, what would they be?
Oh, well, we talked about them, two of them at least: choice
Yeah,
and
trust
trust.
and trust.
And what's my third word? I would say vulnerability.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to be
Trust,
really vulnerable.
vulnerability. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Erica, for sharing your story and for helping me bring awareness to breast cancer. Thank you so much.
Yes.
You mentioned that
Oh,
you would respond to every single person that contacts you. Where can listeners learn more about the work you're doing and also connect with you?
yes. Visit my website, which is my full name. It's at the bottom there, www.ericaneubertcampbell.com.
I'll put the link in the description and the show notes so listeners can just click and go directly to the site. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Erica.
Thank you so much, Wisdom. What an honor to be with you and your listeners.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's it for today's episode of the Observeday podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who'd love to celebrate life's special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observance stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.